Altbays.
Altbays.
Altbays. Altbays. And we're live. Altbays Show brought to you by Altbays.NZ. This is show number 176. It's been a great journey. It's been a lot of fun having you all joining us every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 p.m. Always chatting with very exciting and interesting people from all over Aotearoa, New Zealand. Thank you for supporting the team. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's a great way to see us growing and bringing more cool people here to chat. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, and you can also find us on all the leading audio platforms because, yes, of course, we are a podcast. So you will find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Amazon Prime, Amazon Music, I think, and iHeartRadio, all the main ones. We are also publishing this beautiful thing here, the Coral Minds magazine, made by interesting people and beautiful people from the Coromando. It's growing, man. It looks beautiful, doesn't it? And if you are listening to us and you cannot see the cover of the magazine, go on coralminds.nz. You have all the content online, and we also do an audio version. So if you don't have access to the printed copy, you can see the online version, or you can listen to the magazine, which is pretty cool because accessibility matters. On my left tonight, I have the pleasure to have Mr. Ross Liggins. Hi, Ross.
Hi there, Leo. Thanks for having me.
Did you like that introduction? That was fast,
fantastic. Man. No ums and ahs and nothing. It was cool.
I've been practicing. I have educators here with me tonight. I'm like, oh, I just did the same. I just made the first mistake. I've been watching my likes. It's like, you know, it's like kind of like, and I'm trying to stop with the likes and the hums.
You're doing a good job.
Thank you very much.
I like it.
How's life?
For me? Mm-hmm. Life's fine. Really good.
Yeah?
Really enjoying semi-retirement and yeah, everything's good.
Semi-retirement?
Mm-hmm. Do a little bit of work. Do a day or so work a week and then go sailing and fishing and surfing and gardening and hanging out with Sumi. It's cool.
The work that you do, does it actually help with the finances, or it's more a thing of like keeping you active and keeping you useful for the society and for yourself?
Well, life is active in itself, so I don't need work to make me active. I do it for the money, basically.
Good.
But it's fun too. It's good.
Good. How is the sailing at the moment?
It's been a pretty bad summer, as you know, with all the cyclones and general easterly weather. But the last month's been pretty good. Had a nice trip, 5-day trip out to Mercury's, and it was good. Yeah.
Great. We have the pleasure to have Mr. Ron Morgan here with us tonight. Hello, Ron.
Yeah, greetings. How are you?
Good, man. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
I told you this before, but I'm going to say it live. We had different people from the community asking us, when is Ron coming to the show, man? So I'm glad we're doing this.
Looking forward to it.
You've been part of this community for how many years now?
Well, I first came here as a 5-year-old holidaying, and that's quite a few years ago, yeah. And then when a teaching job came up, I immediately applied. It was a dream town and a dream position, so I was absolutely stoked to get accepted and be part of the community. I had 37 years at Mercury Bay Area School, so when it came to third generation, it was time for retirement.
I want to ask you about that. Just before we dive deep into that, I just want to say thank you to Lotta Love, plant-based cooking, brought us some dinner tonight. How was that?
Beautiful, yeah.
Fantastic.
Good stuff, Ross.
We're being spoiled.
Yeah. We've been spoiled. So I put a story on Instagram. Tanya sent us a beautiful mac and cheese, and she also sends us some desserts that we're going to have some later. I think it's a beetroot chocolate cheesecake. It's amazing. I had it before, and she sent us some treats for tonight. So make sure to check her out. We're going to have her on the screen. Okay, and it's a lot of love plant-based. I'm just gonna give a shout out here. A lot of love will be at the Waka. Oh, we're gonna have the Wakaama competition in Whitianga. So that's next Friday the 20th and Saturday the 21st. A lot of love will be down at the Wakaama along with all the vendors supporting this epic event. Come down, say hi. It would be lovely to meet. Okay, so make sure to say hi to Tanya. She is the black trailer with the beautiful sign written art in turquoise. So look out for plant-based, lot of love. What?
Yeah, boy.
I know, right? What are they serving? Hot food, chili, which is a walnut and mushroom-based chili with black and red kidney beans served with coconut yogurt and some sliced green onion and corn chips on the side. I'm hungry again. We just had food. Plant-based sausage rolls, mushroom and walnuts with herbs, panko crumb spices, lentil and vegetable curry, and of course the treats, those that drive me crazy, raw coconut bars, cacao and beetroot tart, dairy-free ice cream, raspberry. I'm gonna, sorry Tanya, I have to stop because it's driving me crazy. But it's all delicious stuff, and I'm already like thinking about going and attacking that dessert.
You totally recommend it.
Yeah.
I know, right?
Come on.
Gorgeous.
Bring it on.
Bring it on, bring it on. Ron, you said that it was the dream job at the dream place, like at the place to be. How was Whitianga at that time? Can you describe us the Mercury Bay?
Well, it was a major decision to change to an area school. It was operating on two sites where the Lost Spring is now and a district high school. So the community made a collective decision to amalgamate into an area school. And because of that, I think they were so supportive of the early years at the school. It was unbelievable, the support and the enthusiasm and the parental backing. And the students too were just made the school magnificent. And it was a small area. Obviously, it's developed in a big way now, but it's always been a beautiful town for sharing, informal exchange, helping, getting behind anyone in need, and just so beautiful in so many different ways.
When it comes to the size of it, like population-wise, how many people were living here at the time? Would you be able to tell?
I'm not sure. Probably a couple of thousand, but or less. Yes, the school roll has just exploded. Probably about 300 at school. That's a guess, though. But there were a lot of people were sending their students to boarding school, and they kept them back here, which was good. The numbers increased incrementally, and then the roll started, and then when the waterways hit the town, the numbers seemed to explode.
It changed a bit, right?
Hugely.
Yes. How was that for you, for both of you, to see these big changes with development, with big houses suddenly popping up in the Mercury Bay, or there was always like some big houses more like for wealthy people? Was that part of the history, or it came along the years?
Well, when I first came, I came here in I think it was 76 at the beginning, and there didn't seem to be a lot of wealth here then. I lived in Kuatuni, so that was completely just a tiny little village. There was just very few houses anywhere there, Ron. But definitely in the last 25 years, it's really exploded as far as wealth and money and settlement, number of people. I think it's 6,000 now, is it? Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Must be
close to that, Ross.
Yeah. I remember, I think when I first came, was the road sealed between Brophy's and Wharekaho? There wasn't.
No.
It was a dirt road. Yeah, I thought I remembered that, yeah. And Kuatuna Road was all dirt road for years and years too, so things have really changed. But Ron's been here longer than me, so he would have probably seen even more difference.
Do you think that the access to things was also something that improved quite a lot? Like, were people choosing to come to the Coromandel because of the lifestyle, or it was just like an opportunity for work that it was different from the cities?
I think a lot of my friends and a lot of people I know actually came here as resulting from sporting events, whether it be bowls, golf. We had a couple of big rugby tournaments here and other big sporting events, and they often came and stayed for the week and thought, gee, pretty good place to be, and had a great time socially while they were here. And I think whether it be fishing, the influence of sports bringing people into this town, I think, is underestimated. A huge number of people I know first came here because of sport and are still here.
There you go. Wow. And is it something that, because you've been fishing all this time, right? You've been out in the sea for, I guess, from when you can think about yourself as
at every opportunity. I used to fish off the wharf as a little 5-year-old, and I'll never just used to listen to all the skippers coming in with their catches, and I learned a few interesting words from the skippers about the fish they lost. But
can you reproduce them live nowadays?
Not live. But I knew all the skippers' names on the boats, and I drew pictures of them. And I just dreamt one day of owning a boat to go fishing. And Mum used to go crook because I didn't know my tables at school, but I knew all these skippers, and it was quite interesting now. And the wharf was just a dream place to be as a young boy. There was always something happening, and pie cart at the end of the wharf that was for lunch, and sat there catching sprats, and it was just a dream as a youngster.
Was game fishing a thing back in the days? Or
yes, but not marlin so much. Oh, sorry, in the early years, yes, but then during the 70s, 60s, there were very few marlin caught, and mainly sharks we were fishing for then. But then they started coming back, boats went further afield, and it's interesting, the change. And tuna came and went, and the tuna are back again, so that was interesting.
Is it something that you are part of it as well? Like, do you do the fishing and also the game fishing, or you always...
Not so much game fishing these days, but at every opportunity I'm out on the water.
And how much of that actually impacts the economy of a place like our area? Because a lot of people talk about that, but not many people actually know the numbers and the...
the economic level of spending is just incredible for those big tournaments. I know my wife was a New World checkout operator, and she said the day before the big recent tournament, they just sold out of all the big meats packs and every commodity that was attractive for people on boats. Whereas previously that a lot of them would bring it in, but this year it just seemed quite different. There was huge spending in town. Huge.
I saw when you sent me that bio and I was reading about some of your adventures in Canada, and we're going to talk about that, but you made sure to point out your care for the environment as well, because a lot of the fishing that you were doing, you were paying attention to what was going on. How is that relationship? Because I see both points. I see a competition like that being good for the economy, but I also see the side when people say that could not be the best thing for the environment if it's not done properly, and some people will argue that there's not even a good side of that. How does the care for someone who cares about the environment, when you put both things, when you balance those things?
Well, I know a huge percentage, like something like 95% of those fish were tagged and released during the recent competition. And I was mentioned in Canada, it was quite sad because I caught a lot of fish travelling across Canada, but because of the acid rain, there were beautiful, clear lakes, and the fish looked good, but the mercury, the content of those fish was excessive, and you could only eat a couple of small ones. And it was really sad because the acid rain came down and there wasn't the vegetation to naturally filter the water. It just poured in and accumulated in northern Canada. It was really sad.
So you couldn't eat the fish.
No.
When they tag the fish, the game fish, how do they keep a record of the information on the tag? Because that would only come to light if the fish was caught again, wouldn't it?
Yes, there was actually one fish caught
With
during
a tag.
this tournament with it already tagged.
Ah.
And one of the fishermen actually was on the boat that tagged it in Tonga.
Oh, really?
And he caught it again here. Well, he didn't catch it, but the boat did 5 years later. So, no, those tags will indicate where a fish has been caught and caught again, but the electronic tags, which are really expensive, that they've tagged the great whites with at the moment, they're tracking, they can give a lot more information of continuous movement,
They can
which
tell
is
you-
quite like depth and where they actually are at any point in time.
Yeah.
And you can track them on a laptop or something. So
You can see that it was just swimming beside you the day before.
yes, and there's been a few attacks at spear fishermen of just recent
From
weeks.
great whites.
Great whites,
really?
yeah. They've taken the catch and
Wow.
they've had them on a float with the trailing behind them.
Do you have any idea of how many of the tagged fish get recaught?
Not a huge amount. I suspect quite a few may be caught international longliners, and
Oh,
they
okay.
might necessarily want to
not.
bring them
No.
back, but no, they're out there swimming with the tags, so we'll see what happens.
Right. It's something that I'm not very familiar with numbers and the procedures because it's not part of what you do, right? I think we talked about that before.
I don't go game fishing, but I go fishing. I go fishing just for the table for eating. But I don't target game fish. Well, I caught a bonito the other day. Is that a game fish?
Yes.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
No, the other classic was when I went from here to Canada. It was from the midsummer, 25 degrees, to Canada, and it was minus 20.
Woohoo!
So I was in withdrawal symptoms and had cabin fever, and one of the other teachers' husbands took me ice fishing, which on a lake. So they went round in a snowmobile with a depth sounder, which could read through the ice, and pulled to a halt, and with a fish underneath the lake. And then they had an auger that drilled through and dropped our lines and hooked a couple of fish. And then he called his friend up and he towed out a tent, which came over the ice hole we had, and had a few rums and fished for the afternoon. And absolutely classic experience, ice fishing, through a couple of feet of ice.
Is that in freshwater or saltwater?
Freshwater,
Freshwater.
like, yeah.
Oh. So what were they, salmon or
No, walleye, yeah.
walleye?
Beautiful eating.
What took you to study to become an educator, to become a teacher? What was the tipping point? What was the thing that made you click for that?
Well, it was interesting. In my day, they used to have different careers options, and people had come into the secondary school, like the Army, Air Force, various groups, and I used to go to them all because to get out of class, you'd have a couple of hours.
Sounds fair.
So I said to my friends that was teaching, and when we left the class, the teacher was horrified that we were even considering going into the teaching profession. But we went along and listened, and I'll never forget, we weren't really thinking of teaching at all. It was just time out of class. Then they flashed a few pictures up of rugby, university rugby. Then they had pictures of camps and sports and holidays. And I was thinking, gee, this is a few. And in those days you got paid to go to teachers' college. But then they mentioned they were particularly short of men at that stage. There were very few men in the primary service. In fact, that's so sad these days. There's not many. But then they said that there was a ratio of 7-to-1 females to males.
There you go.
So out of the group that went, about 4 of us said, we'll give this teachers' college a bit of a whirl, meet a few ladies. But lo and behold, most of the four stayed right through to retirement. They'll never. It's quite a joke amongst us all. But
Despite the women.
Despite the women.
we were at Ardmore Teachers College, which was residential too. It was a beautiful feeling, lifelong friendships, just great.
How many years did you teach in total?
42.
42.
Wow.
So when you look back, Ron, from the start, from those first years to the last ones, how much did you have to adapt to like new regulations that came, or like new systems, or like just the way that people were changing, or like new teachers coming with new techniques? And then how was that thing to adapt? Because I work at the school and I see that. I see new teachers coming up fresh with a lot of ideas, and then old school teachers having their ways, and then sometimes there's a bit of like, oh, are we adjusting or you are adjusting? Who is actually adjusting here? So, but you have the whole spectrum there in your.
It's a bit embarrassing, really. In my final years, they had milk in schools came back, and when I first started teaching, they had milk in schools there, so that was quite interesting and a bit of a personal joke. But no, in the early years, you weren't so demanding with the pressures of. Just amazing what's required today. And you had a huge amount of time that you could coach students in sports, music, whatever, and as part of your job, and you did it great, enjoyed. And as time went through, the extra demands of reporting and planning, and it just got to a stage where it was self-inflicted, like the teachers were asking themselves to do all this extra work, and then it just became ridiculous, really, and it put off a lot of teachers. The time during the holidays, you had to. I know I was so far behind in my planning, I'd try and catch up during a holiday time, and courses. And then in my later years, the computerisation was great, but it just without. The students were way ahead of me, and it was just got impossible, really. And the demands today of teachers, like very few are able to get out and coach kids for sports, and they just haven't got the time and the energy because they're after the demands are just huge, and the stresses I think are a lot more than we had in the early years.
It started off in the. When was it? The late 80s when they brought in Tomorrow's Schools.
Tomorrow's Schools,
That was the start of it, wasn't it? Yeah, I was teaching then, and it was just suddenly you got this just mammoth amount of work to do on top of your teaching. Yeah.
Well, it took a lot of the enjoyment out of it, I believe. And I think it's put a lot of teachers off joining the profession.
I think so.
Like as I mentioned, how many men are in primary schools? And they... Many of us aren't attracted to some of the demands, clerical and...
There was also the thing about sexual abuse of children with men, and it was quite a determining factor with
very much so,
men, wasn't it? Yeah, whether it was real or not, I don't know.
I could see you mentioning something, Ron, about the well-being, about like making sure that the students were enjoying themselves, that they were understanding that there was a place, like a cool place to be. Like from what I was reading, I just could pick up that vibe that no wonder a lot of people were asking us to bring you here, because probably you influenced a lot of the adults and a lot of the people from our region. How was that for you? Like, was it something that was clear for you, or like that was your style, or like were you looking at the other teachers, how they were doing, you were like, I'm not that teacher. I'm actually not that guy. I want to do my thing.
Well, within a staff, you've got a beautiful range of personalities, and everyone brings something different. But I used to think enthusiasm is contagious. So if you try and present things, even if you didn't enjoy enthusiastically, often they would pick up a bit and be engaged a bit more, but also try to involve them and their self-esteem is built up as much as possible. And we worked really hard in the early years on getting some good positive role models out in front, and well, it seemed to work. And I know during one of the things we had as he started the New Zealand area school, leadership in sports, which still operating today, which is personally pretty rewarding. But my main philosophy there was to, especially in small schools, to really try and have positive role models. Some of those smaller schools, they didn't get too many opportunities, and often they would just sit back and weren't extended to their potential. But I think that positive role models, and that's the beauty of the area school. It's all one. Like that life ceremony they have is absolutely gorgeous, where the 5-year-olds present to those that have been there for a long time, but all the little ones just look up to the older students, and being in the one school, I think, is just gorgeous. Love the area school culture.
What do you guys think about academic careers? Like, because schools will usually prepare you for, to continue studying, to go to universities, but I see a lot of teachers being honest with students and saying, if it's not for you, then it's not. You can try other things. You can become something else. You don't have to follow that. How do you guys see this thing with like going for academic studies after school?
Well, you've got students with all different abilities and all different ways of learning. You've got students who learn better with visual or audio or kinetic, moving, and as a teachers, as Ron will know, with big classes, 30 people in a class, and you've got to kind of aim for the middle, really, don't you? And you've got kids sort of going like this, just wanting to get up and move, and then you've got other ones on their phones down here watching something, and they've got all these different ways of learning, but we're expected to actually kind of hit the middle, don't you reckon, Ron? Exactly,
yes, and I think we're catering a lot better today with the Gateway program. I think it's absolutely amazing where the students can go out into a different work and learn practical skills too for those that want to explore different options. And I know some people that traditionally left and went to university for pre-selected employment and then really didn't like it when they'd qualified. And this Gateway opportunity where the local firms are involved, and many of them are actually hiring those students that come through the Gateway program. So I think that's catered for a lot of...
That's really good.
I think that's a brilliant innovation. Yeah. But no, you're very difficult, especially those with learning difficulties and behavioural problems. There's a lot of students coming in that had turbulent backgrounds and different parental responses. Some of them are super helpful, others don't care too much, which makes it difficult.
Yes, and I guess in 42 years, you could also see a lot of changes when it comes to te reo Maori, and Maori culture in schools.
Very much so, yes, and developed hugely. So I know the local schools make a major effort in that regard.
Which it takes, it should be basic, but at the same time it takes courage because it requires changes, right? We got to adapt and we gotta better ourselves to make sure that everybody is on the same page, right?
Yeah, but it has changed a lot. I mean, since we're at school, I think in our secondary school there was only one Maori boy, and well, that was a long time ago, but we had absolutely no training, no teaching in te reo or Māori culture. You learned a little bit of history, but that was Pākehā written history anyway, probably.
I'd come from Rotorua, so
oh yeah, you'd have different situations.
Yeah, although not conversant in te reo, certainly understood protocols, and that was helpful.
Yeah. No, we never had any of that at school.
No, there was, And no training at Teachers College in those days at all.
No.
But because you grew up in Rotorua, so you had more influence of Maori culture?
Well, there's a lot of friends and mixed and mingled and played rugby with, and and been to functions and tangis and stayed and entertained at Mariah's. So no, in that regard, I was conversant, but not to Rio as such.
But just understanding the culture is so important, right? It's part of all the Kiwis, right? It's part of
Yeah, definitely.
Ron, tell me a little bit about the time in the military, man. Yeah.
Well, in our day, the army, or national service, they called it. They picked certain birthdays, and you had to go into national service, 3 months training in Wairua. And I put it off as long as I could. And being a teacher, I made all sorts of excuses. Finally went there, and it was during the Vietnam conflict, and we were training for Vietnam jungle warfare in the snow, would you believe, in Wairua. It was unbelievable, really. We had a lot of new experiences, but there was a lot of friends missed out, and they were interested to find out what was going on. But it was hard work, but it was made interesting because I made the National Service rugby team, so I had a little bit of time off touring with them. But finally did the officers course. So Captain Morgan.
Captain Morgan. Oh, sound like a pirate.
But then they wanted me to go full time in the army, but I thought I didn't really want to go live in Wairua. Whitianga was where I wanted to be. But
I want to ask about the rugby, because that's a nice way to get into like the rugby when you are.
Can I just ask one question before?
Please, yeah.
Did you become a captain within 3 months?
No, you had to do 2 years.
Oh, 2 years.
2 years of training, lieutenant. Yeah, and then as soon as there was a change of government, because there was the demands after you trained as well, you had to do quite a few weekends, and invariably it clashed with social functions I wanted to go to, or big rugby games, and
you had to get all your hair cut off.
Oh yes. And I had all the dress uniform for officers. Used it fancy dress, and I haven't got a piece left, actually.
Well, the girls probably would have liked you in uniform.
Well, yeah, no, it was a very nice dress uniforms, but people wore it to various fancy dresses. And now it's all gone, but they were interesting times. But we were on not too far away from heading to Vietnam at one stage, which had all the inoculations and the kit ready to go.
Yeah.
But luckily.
So that's what I wanted to ask, because how old were you at the time?
21.
21. Were you making sense of the global scenario? Because I guess communication was different than what it is nowadays, and you were immersed on the thing, like you were living it, but like, were you aware of the size and what was actually happening?
Not really. When I look back on reflection, no. It was a bit of indoctrination, shall we say, when you were in there, and it was pretty horrific, some of the reports of people coming back, and it wasn't pleasant, but interesting times. Yeah.
Interesting times, because I always have mixed feelings when I bring up topics like that, like the military, and some people will be very straightforward, like, oh, it's so good for you, like the discipline element and like the way that you become more mature and how much you learn. And then you hear from some other people, such a brainwash, you don't get to understand actually what's going on. And then you can get a lot of traumas out of that. So I love listening from people who were living it, who were living the experience. When they came to you and said, I think we're going to have to go, what happened? How was the family? How were you?
Oh, we weren't that close, but so we had a kit was packed ready and all the inoculation. And
did you have a choice whether you went or not?
No.
So
sorry. I would have, I think, in the final thing I could have
The Australians they had to go, didn't they?
Yes, yeah.
But we had a choice, I think. Did we?
Well, we didn't get to that situation, but I think there would have been in the final.
There would have been a lot of pressure on you to go as an officer.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Oh. I was lucky I missed the draft.
But what about from someone who was outside of the institution? Were you following up what was happening?
Yeah, I was at university at that time, and Tim Shadbolt was up there and doing his lunchtime rants, and there was lots of demonstrations that we had in down Queen Street.
Oh, in Vietnam, yes,
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, so it was different perspective, I guess, from the army point of view.
Did that experience open doors for you, Ron? Like playing rugby and just by being such a high, like an important position in the army?
It's not really, no. No, I just went back into the teaching after that, and I met a lot of people that obviously there was 600 in our group, and no, not really.
And then I want you to tell me a little bit more about this, the leadership programs, because a lot of people in the area and a lot of adults.
Oh, right. No, well, when I was in Canada on teacher exchange, well, I always wanted to have a look at their outdoor education program. And during the holidays, they have a massive break in summer. And a lot of students in North America go to camps of various descriptions. And one was, they invited me to this Canadian leadership course, which they have the really selected top sports coaches. It's a sporting orientated leadership. And the best students have to apply that come to the course. And many of them are pretty elite athletes. And it was just an unbelievable experience. And I got paid quite good money because at that stage I was on the New Zealand dollar on exchange and it wasn't going as far, obviously, in Canada as it could have. So I had a period there and just loved it. My dream was to take some students from Mercury Bay there. And they were really keen on the idea, some from New Zealand. So soon after I got back, I made efforts and we had some massive fundraising around town. And there's been 90 students over the years have been to that leadership course locally. Wow. And it's something that's just, those students, the most memorable trip, because we stop in Hawaii or New Caledonia, and then they get to the course, and we often go to New York and around to Niagara Falls. But the course itself is unbelievable. And our students from here just excelled. They really did. It was amazing. And there would have been probably 12 different trips. You know, I went on about 5 or 6 of them, I think, and other teachers went and friends. But they had all the, besides sports, there was music, but mainly we went for the sports course. And it was just great.
Was it just Mercury Bay students that went? Or,
well, it was unbelievable, really, because they nominated me as a New Zealand selector. And they thought I was offering it nationally.
Oh.
But we were sending students from Magri, from Kuatunu, Whamapa, Matarangi, Hot Water Beach, Tiraringa. Yeah, well, they thought, in Great Barrier Island, they thought we were all over New Zealand, but we kept it tight here. And a couple of friends, children went, well, not children, they were, but no, it was interesting. They had a big lake and they had swimming. Their swimming is one of the options. But in Canada, there's no swimming pools in the schools. They learn to swim if they go to a pool and pay professional coaches. And these big athletic hulks would come down to the swimming and we'd be in a group with Mercury Bay, who half of them were lifesavers at Hot Water Beach and really competent swimmers. And these guys have got safety things around their arms, flapping around, and our girls especially would just look back and just chuckle. It was just unbelievable because a lot of them couldn't swim. Inland Canada.
Wow.
In my class, 2/3 had never seen the sea. And you showed them pictures of sharks and things. They were just total awe. It was crazy.
It'd be a bit cold in the lakes up there too.
Not too bad in summer.
Wasn't it?
No, not too bad. Beautiful lakes, just gorgeous, yeah. But no, and the girls used to buy ball gowns, I'll never forget, because their season was completely different from ours, and they'd have discounted ball gowns in Toronto, 75% off. What you can imagine, our ball was often just coming up, and the girls just going there crazy, buying ball gowns and taking them for their friends and trying them on and parading around. No, it was hilarious, really, and just so much fun we had.
Ron, when you say a leadership course, can anyone be a leader, or you look for the characteristics of a leader in a person and then you amplify that?
A really good question. Yeah, I think you can develop leadership courses, a leadership ability. Obviously, the ones we took showed some had already offered themselves, and many, were they willing to put themselves forward in positions, which in itself said they, like junior counsellors or something, but often they showed leadership on the sports field or as a counsellor or just in their general demeanour. They would, and I think certainly the skills that they had at that course developed their leadership further and gave them heaps of ideas to come back into the schools to develop, which was in itself brilliant. Yeah.
Did you feel like that, Ross, when you were younger as a leader? Were you?
I didn't see myself much as a leader, actually. I was captain of a couple of teams, but that's about as far as the leadership. Oh no, and prefects too. Do they have prefects? Do they still have prefects?
No, counsellors, I think.
Counsellors, they're called. Oh, we used to have prefects, which were a bit. Probably the counsellors today are much more empathetic and compassionate than prefects were in our day. Prefects were little, quite cruel sometimes to the students.
Some of the boarding schools especially.
Shocking, yes. Yeah. You could actually, you're allowed to beat the kids sometimes. You physically abuse them with sand shoes or something like that, back in our day. But I think counsellors is a much better name and probably a much better thing for them to do than what we had. Our leadership was different.
Well, I guess most people will agree that beating up children at school was not great practice. No. However, we also listen to a lot of people saying that nowadays the things starts to change, and then sometimes the teachers don't even have the authority that they should have, because parents come and say and threat them, and then you start to see a very important position in our society being threatened because they should have some sort of respect and high authority there. Do you agree with that? Do you think it's losing its essence?
No, definitely, yes. Like excessive raising your voice at a student or something, they've got grounds for making complaints, and yes, certainly changed, definitely.
Ross?
Well, I'm not a teacher. I haven't taught high school for a long time, so it's I think 1990 was the last time, and there was no physical abuse of students by teachers at that time. I think it stopped probably in the 80s,
somewhere
early
there,
80s.
I think. Yeah.
But we used to get caned regularly, with a big stick and whack on the bum, 6 of the best sort of thing.
Certainly had my share at school.
yeah, Ron would have been on the receiving end a few times, I imagine. Used to put a book, an exercise book down your pants before you went sometimes. So the teacher would always know with the sound of the cane on the book, think, get it out. For me, I I wouldn't condone any kind of physical abuse, especially by prefects, let alone teachers.
Was taking students on trips to do like outdoors activities your best time?
Oh, absolute highlights, and it gives me great personal satisfaction to see the Mount Ruapehu trip continue, and some of the huis and the sports leadership. But the Mount Ruapehu trip, probably a highlight. We used to go barter our way around with seafood around the mountains, and nothing was computerised in those days, and some of the chairlift operators were very susceptible to a bit of trading with a sack of mussels for a few students to go up the chairlift, and a few students totaled probably 100. So when you work, we'd take all sorts of seafood up. And at one stage, they even gave us one of the mountain goats, the yellow trucks that went up and down the mountain, and we gave them a few crayfish. And we used to trade, I'll never forget, black snapper, which is called porori. And they used to love blacks. Well, we were trading black snapper because all the locals was, oh no. But it was all packaged, and they had so much fun. And the first year, I remember there wasn't much in the way of ski gear, and all the fish factory jackets and leggings were worn. It looked like we were sponsored by the fish factories up there, and we couldn't afford the lessons, ski lessons. So I said, just listen to some of the ski instructors. Well, especially some of the girls, they were all eyes and ears with the ski instructors and listening, and then used all the things they'd heard and the way they went. And some marvellous times on the mountain. It was just gorgeous. But we had a great education for them, but the things up the mountain were so expensive, it was ridiculous. So I'll never forget, we stopped at Taumarunui at a supermarket, and I said to them, buy some Mars bars, crunchy bars, because up the mountain they'll be about 4 times the price. And I bought a big box to give away for prizes and awards and things. And some of the girls lined me up and set me up and said, oh, Dad, all you do is buy chocolate and sit and watch sport on TV. You never give us anything, and you never buy us anything, and you buy the chocolate and sit there all day. And I'm in the queue with all these ladies looking at me, and I'm absolutely set up, going bright red, and the looks disdain from the other people. They thought that's all I did is buy this big box of chocolates. They set me up something awful there. But no, we used to often stop at the trout fishing in Turangi. There was a group of fly fishermen, and we'd take seafood for them, and they'd teach the kids how to fly fish into the pond where the trout were, and each person would catch a trout as well. And that'd be our first meal, often the trout cooked, but the people taking it, all the older fishermen. It was just such a gorgeous learning experience and interaction with them, So many great memories of those trips. And we used to go to Whauwhau and around Waitai camps as well. That was great times.
In Great Barrier, I went on a trip with Ron, and what year would that have been? Probably 90s maybe?
Somewhere there.
Yeah. He took 120 students and parents and teachers to Great Barrier, and he's famous for his organising these giant trips with hundreds of people on it, and somehow everything just works out perfectly, and you get back and it's cool. It was a fantastic trip.
It was wonderful, because I taught up there, and going back was just gorgeous. And but the parental support in the town for trips, for sports, for everything is, just amazing.
Yeah.
Some of the commitment, and time and expense and travel. It's going to get worse too with the road. And those that make rep teams and things, it's just they're huge.
Yeah, the school must miss you with, have they got somebody else to take over your role of organising all the big
Well, they do
the big
quite a
events
few
and all?
camps and things.
Do
And
they still?
outdoor
Yeah.
education,
Oh,
good. But no, Great Barrier Island, it was...
That was a fantastic trip.
You had some stories about the Great Barrier Island. That means a lot to you, by the looks.
No, well, I initially thought I was an undercover detective, I think, because when I went out on the vehicular ferry, I'm listening on the VHF radio to all the fishermen and the communications. And some of the locals were watching. Who's this guy on the radio? And when I got on the island, the word was there's an undercover policeman.
He's a cop.
Coming there. And I went into the chartered club and they pulled out the visitor's book, which hadn't been used for years, and made me sign it. And,
Captain Morgan.
it was amazing. And and then there was before I started, there was a big garage sale I'll never forget. And a big box of cutlery came in, and I'd been reading about using the bone-handled knives for fishing lures, just putting the hook at either end like the traditional Maori had used, and I wanted to make some lures. So in come these bone-handled, well, there was a whole bundle of things in a fish box, and a couple of the locals and they're fighting over these bone-handled knives, and I grabbed one and I just about took it off me, wondering what the earth was going on. And I said to my mate after, they must be making lures too. He said, you dumb bum. He said, they use them for cooking when they heat up substances. And they're looking at me as the new teacher here, wondering
selling paraphernalia.
So, I hadn't even started and I had a bit of a reputation. But no, it was a great experience. We had 3 years out there. And,
what did Rhonda do out there? Did
she worked for the airlines.
Was she?
Yeah, and no, we had beautiful gardens and fishing, and we had chooks. I had about 20 chooks because everything out there is so expensive. You have to order online and it comes by ferry. But we had chooks, and the mash and everything was so expensive. I had a big catch of barracuda, so I threw that, cooked it up outside and threw it to the chooks, and they loved it. So I thought, finally we've saved. But we were giving the eggs away, and then we found people are complaining. They said, those eggs tasted like fish. I said, what do you mean? Because the fish taste, after a couple of weeks, went into the eggs. So I said, we'll solve that. We'll give you the fish as well, so you can have fish and eggs.
Fish omelette.
But no, we had some wonderful times.
What part of Barrier were you living in?
Claris.
In Claris.
There's 3 primary schools out there.
Is it?
And it's quite amazing, really. But there's no secondary school.
Where are the primary schools? Is the one at Trifina?
One, yes, and then one up north.
One at Fitzroy?
Up near there.
Wow.
But it's been quite a connection with the Barrier. A lot of people came back. Traditionally, a lot went to Auckland, secondary schools, boarding school, but many of them found it a better option to come this way and board, especially the lifestyle suited them a lot better than being in a boarding institution in Auckland. And one of the personal highlights was Eloise Blackwell. We brought back, and she boarded with us for 5 years and went on the leadership course, and then went to Shawnigan Lake School under a scholarship, and then ultimately she was the Black Ferns captain coming from Mercury Bay and Great Barrier Island. So it was unbelievable.
Rugby team.
Yes. And actually, you mentioned before, that was not just her, right? You taught a couple of Black Ferns and a couple of All Blacks, right?
Yeah, Buck Shelford was my first year teaching, and his tribute show on television recently. He invited me back, and it was 55 years ago I taught him.
Wow.
And he was brought back and caught up with his family and his brothers and sisters, and it was very rewarding and a beautiful function, and it was just absolutely gorgeous, a real personal lifetime highlight. But following his progress has been, and he's kept in touch, which is crazy but beautiful.
How was Eloise at school?
Oh, marvellous, yeah. No, her group that went through were just gorgeous, yeah. They were all full of life and energy and great friends. The amazing thing, Mercury Bay, is being an area school, some of the students stay together for a long period, and some of the friendships that have developed over in totally lifetime friendships, huge number of married to get wonderful collection of people have married that are local, gone through school together. And being an area school, I think it's quite different. And even students I've taught are friends, and I don't think you get that in the city, or the teachers go one way and the students the other. But
well, if they're together for 13 years, aren't they? If they're at an area school.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I remember one girl said when she left at the leavers dinner, she'd worked out the number of hours she'd spent at Eloise Aotearoa, how many hours she'd spent on a bus coming to and from. She said she could have done an apprenticeship. The time she'd spent on the school bus. But no, there's something really special about this town and friendships and respect, and how many people have kept close-knit groups together. You see at weddings and on Facebook, all these friendships and international visits, people going overseas, just friends from Magri Bay.
I see a lot of people in the area saying how the place used to be, and a lot of them say in a way of like, oh, some things used to be better and some things are definitely better now. But bringing to a more recent scenario, the thing with the roads, for example, the thing with the access to the Coromandel, of course we had a natural disaster that some might say that it was hard to predict, and others will say, well, we should have known better. So how is it for you guys who you have been living here for so long and understanding like how things are working, to see something in this magnitude happening in 2023? Ooh.
Well, I've never seen a storm like Gabriel. When I saw it on the weather map, I thought, wow, that's a mother of a storm, and it's going to do some damage. I mean, there's always been, cyclones and floods and what have you, but there's never been this level of disruption. I don't think.
She was really low. Predictions were as low as Bowler.
Yeah.
And Bowler certainly hit the town big time.
Yeah.
No, I think we had forewarning, but it was, and I think the waterways saved us locally.
With the flooding.
Like the water had somewhere to go. If you look at years back, there was just lines of dunes with swampy areas right through the flatlands. It's quite noticeable. And when they built the waterways, they took that configuration of where the swamps were. But boy, with that amount of rain, we would have been struggling.
Yeah, I think
to get rid of it.
We were pretty lucky too, because I think, as I said before, the rain seemed to stop on the Monday night. It just kind of stopped, and then I guess it went further south to Hastings and the Gisborne area, and I think we dodged a bullet there, even though our coastline got pretty hammered and the roads, of course, got destroyed. But I'd never seen a storm like that before.
No.
And especially with two of them, like with hail too.
Yes.
And I was on on my boat during hail because I had to isolate because I had COVID.
Oh,
I'd rented the house out, so I had nowhere to stay. So I went on the boat.
did that make it safer, Ross, at the end of the day, or not?
It just made me being able to isolate, and the wind actually was really strong, but the water wasn't very rough on the harbour, so it wasn't too bad. Mm.
We got a couple of comments here from the audience. So let's see. Ron, you sound like a wonderful teacher, and how lucky your students were to have you. Gosh, when I went to train as a teacher, I wish they had paid me to do it. Back in the day, things were different. Thanks, Tanya. And
they were actually, but they bonded you for, I think, 3 years.
Oh, yeah.
A good scheme. Like
right.
You got paid, but you were bonded to teach, so they got a return.
so you had to teach for 3 years
I think
after
it was
the course.
3 years, yeah.
Did you have a choice of where you went? Can't remember, or did they just put you somewhere?
Generally you did.
You did.
You could list, but you didn't always get where you wanted to go.
Yeah.
But no, that was a good scheme. Mm.
Yeah.
And I think they could do that with like nursing and some of the professions that are really short.
Yeah.
It's a good investment.
It's a great investment. Well, New Zealand does a good thing with paying for the first year now, right? First year of education, like post school. When you finish school, I think the government is paying for the first year if you're going to uni. Yeah. Is there anything more important than investing in education? Do you guys think, or that should be? I personally see as a big priority, especially coming from a country where education is not the priority for most of the governors in the country. I see how countries can succeed.
No, important. And I think today, in our day, when you did a degree, it was very finite and you followed it right through. But today you've got so many possibilities of pulling special interest things as components and integrated studies and building up your degree. A bit like school qualifications, they're a lot more flexible and they help, a lot more, I think.
Such a huge variety of employment now, isn't it?
Unbelievable.
I mean, in our day it was more, you either went to university and became a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer or an accountant, and
True.
Or you went into the trades and there was,
commercial side of things.
Yeah,
yes.
and the girls became nurses or teachers or what else? There wasn't a lot of choice in those days, was there?
No. Well, today they don't really know when they're at school what sort of thing they're going into.
No.
And even when you start off, it's probably not going to finish that employment. You're going to be changing and adapt to new innovations and technologies.
And a lot of, in our day we had, you were kind of expected to do something like that. You couldn't, there was a very limited choice, but if you didn't fit into any of those choices, you're still bound by going into one of them. And, other kids, nowadays the kids have got all kinds of choices and, can do what they want really, compared to what we had.
The kids, eh? And I got another comment here. Hi, Ron. You made such a positive impact on me as a teacher, and now in my middle age, your kindness and generosity continues to make a profound impact on me as an adult. What a mighty, fine man. Lots of love, Lana.
What?
Lana Garland.
Oh, how beautiful.
Garland, yeah.
Amazing family. No, she's done so well, isn't she? So creative. And
so that's a cool thing, to see like what people are up to after so many years. Like small communities really provide that, right?
Oh yes, and just to see people go on and do achieve various things and accolades, just beautiful, just lovely.
If not teaching, what would Ron have done, man? What would have been?
Good question. Probably the Navy. Something to do with the sea, I think. But no, I didn't have any visions of changing once I started teaching, although at times it was very frustrating. But no, and the social contacts and the personal gratification. You saw people enjoying themselves and me enjoying what they were doing, because many of the things we did I enjoyed so much as well, and sort of got paid for it, which was a bit of a bonus.
I'm sure people saying how much you impacted their lives mean a lot. But when you finished, when you retired, when you decided to stop, what was the feeling? Was it like, yeah, I've done my thing and that's it, or it was a bit of an emptiness? You were like, oh, what's next?
Sad in some ways, and certainly missed the contact with the students and the social contact with the staff. We had a really great, fantastic staff relationship altogether. We had so many laughs and enjoyment. It was just gorgeous. So I missed that hugely, but didn't miss all the extra demands required, which took weekends and holiday time to fulfil what I thought was meaningless. If the staff could have sat down and said, look, what things do we really don't need we can cull off to make our teaching much more enjoyable? I think they could cut off 2/3 of the things that they're doing and requirements that are taking so much time and energy. And if teachers are going to school tired and frustrated and annoyed, that shows in their teaching. But if they're going to school happy and enthusiastic and have had a good weekend and refreshed, I feel that, as I said, enthusiasm is contagious, and I really feel that teachers today could take a good look at some of the demands they're putting on themselves, as well as some of the ministry requirements and some of the new courses that are required to pick up on. And it's just huge.
There's a lot of talk, I don't know if it's just the national government, but like some politicians saying that we should bring back more of the basics, the basic studies. Do you guys agree with that? So we think we should be looking actually to open up and be more like flexible and pay attention to students' needs?
Often I hear people saying, oh, students today can't measure, things like measurements. It's just not, they can't do it. Or sometimes you take money into a checkout person and say, can you get rid of some of the smaller stuff? And they struggle without having the computer there to tell them how much change, and they try to add up, and some of those basics, and even telling time. Some of them, like 20, you can take your break at 22, 20 to 10. I say, what time is it? They don't, and everything's digital, so there's a lot of things basics that we took for granted, I feel, that are missed. But then the converse to that is that they're learning other skills and things. But yeah, basics certainly need some attention.
Headspace for it. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I haven't, as I said, I haven't taught in secondary school for a long time, so I don't know what the processes are there. But I know that I knew my times tables when I was about 8, and trying to. I know some of the kids these days, like you ask them what 6 4s are, and they sort of have to get out the calculator and do this kind of stuff. Yeah. But I don't know how relevant it is, because they have got calculators, they have got their computers, and they've got ways of getting the answer without having it in here. But personally, I think a sound grounding in maths and English is definitely valuable.
I saw a video yesterday that the guy, he looks drunk, and his missus is filming him. She's recording him, and she's pointing the camera at him, and she tells him, "You're drunk." And he's like, "No, I'm not." And she's like, "Yes, you are. You're drunk." And he's like, "No, I'm not." And then there's a clock behind him, and she's like, "You're not?" And he's like, "No. Can you tell the time?" And then he turns to the clock and says, "I'm not drunk."
Well, classic. Yeah, well done.
This is cool. Taylor, do you want to... Oh, I got one more. Oh, we cannot leave the audience hanging. That's for sure. So, here we go. Where are we? Mark Atkinson taught me at Western Heights Primary over 50 years ago. Great teacher. Cheers, Mark Atkinson.
Goodness me. Wow. Remember you well, Mark. 50 years, a lot of time, mate. Don't mention it too loud.
Gosh.
Hey, thanks for that, Mark. Great.
50 years ago, man.
And he's listening now. That's amazing.
Wow, that's cool, isn't it?
The power of the internet.
Does he say where he's living?
Mark, where are you living? He's going to tell us.
Really?
He's going to write on the chat. If
Oh.
he's watching us, he will.
Right.
Do you engage with internet, social media? Are you present? Do you find value in the online too?
I certainly do, yeah. My wife tells me off because I spend too much time. But no, I keep in touch with people in Canada and friends worldwide and locally, all the various gossips and what's happening. No, I love it. I really love it.
Ross?
Less so. I'll tolerate Facebook and look at it now and then just to, or if somebody's travelling and I want to keep up with them, I'll do it. But I don't know. I'd rather be out on the sea or doing other stuff than sitting at a computer. Actually.
Fair enough. What's next, Ron? What's next in life? What do you still want to do? What are the things that you want to bring to your life? What you haven't done yet?
Well, there's one thing I'd love to do. On the foreshore, we've got a buffalo remembrance where the anchor is. And one thing that really I feel for is the merchant navy folk during the war that lost their lives. And they were in the convoys, and without the convoys supplying the troops in Europe, we just wouldn't have won the war. Huge number lost their lives. Very, very brave people. At Come Anzac Day, there's no remembrance for the merchant navy folk. And they were so brave. They were in convoys and the U-boats were sinking them. And the convoys continued and sunk ship after ship. And they were often in the water with oil and flames. And I feel that nationally we aren't recognising the merchant navy, people that lost their lives. And I'd love to extend that area. I went to council a few years ago and they agreed that funding was an issue of developing that a little further and having a national day and where we sort of see remembrance where a lot of people have lost their lives at sea and have never found the bodies and they can't bury them, so they could have a little plaque there as well and have it nicely designed. So we remembered the merchant navy, locally those that have died in our area. And when you go back, there's some incredible tales and stories of ships that have sunk out here, like the Mana Wanui sunk out here, and there was a big ship in 1965, and 6 people were drowned out here. And way back, there's a ship called the Fiery Star. In the 1860s it was. They had a load of wool on board, and that caught alight. They couldn't put it out and had a heap of passengers coming from, I think, Australia. And the interesting tale is that the skipper jumped in the lifeboat with 2 lifeboats, and they took 80 people in 2 lifeboats, and left the crew on the boat that was still alight. But the 2 lifeboats disappeared off Kuvi Island way back, and there was 80-odd people lost their lives. Yeah. Not many people know about this. Wow. But the ship, the crew managed to put the fire subdue it. And all the crew lived. They got rescued.
Oh, gosh.
So, like this 80-odd, admittedly it was years and years, 1860, but just a little plaque and some sort of thing I'd really like to try and develop and get some sponsors or some backing to try and extend that. So we had once a year we could remember those that had lost their lives.
Some ceremony or
ceremony,
rituals
yeah. And but people at families, and there's a lot of people who've lost folk through diving accidents and drownings, and they could have just a little brick with a plaque on it, somewhere they could go, because at the moment they've got nowhere to go to remember lost ones. So that's one thing, when I get some time, that I hope to develop a little more, so Mercury Bay could remember the merchant navy, yes, mainly, but locally ones that lost their lives as well.
And you, correct me if I'm wrong, you learned a lot of those things by the time you worked for the museum? Was that part of it?
Yes,
that you got into the reading?
Yes, and followed, that's true. Mm.
How was that experience? That's a big job.
Yes, no, it was interesting, especially we had a big buffalo ceremony and following up. No, I learned a lot, actually. It was interesting. Mm.
The museum is looking great nowadays. We have bags, and we can tell that
Yes.
it's a legacy,
Yes,
like this.
yes, no, something the community can be proud of, for sure.
Mark now is in Auckland, currently in a motorhome in Waipu on holiday.
Well, greetings and thanks again, Mark. Great.
Shout out to Mark watching Altbays from his motorhome. That's reach, Ross.
That's cool. That's really cool. 50 years. 50 years ago.
That's amazing.
Well, yeah, Buck Shelford was, I'll whisper it, 55 years ago.
Wow.
I wonder
in
if
those
Buck's
days-
watching.
Where is he at the moment? Where is Buck?
He's in Auckland and he's actually taken on the chairmanship of the RSA nationally and doing a lot of charity work for prostate cancers and doing really well. Mm.
That's incredible.
It was interesting because at the function, they still call me Sir. In those days, you got called Sir. Absolutely ridiculous. And, I got called all sorts of names over the years which you couldn't share for my students. But he still calls me Sir, even 55 years later, and the other people that were on the panel with me at the ceremony. But I said to him, the roles have changed completely. From tonight, you were calling me Sir, but now the roles have changed. I call you Sir. After 55, he gave me a big hug. And no, it was gorgeous.
You never know where the influence is going to end, eh? Like when you're a teacher, when you are an educator, you do something and it's going to show forever. Like it.
Well, I always use what you say and what you do always come back to you. And I sort of live by that a bit. Like if you're real sodden to someone, they're probably the same back. But if you try to be pleasant and do something, like it's amazing, you go around town, you talk, you little discounts, and you go to book in, oh no, we booked, oh is that you? Oh no, we might be able to fit you in. So just little things like that, that it's so gorgeous, but
It's well deserved too.
Well deserved. Thanks for coming and sharing some of like, I think it's just like what we got like 0.5% of the stories, but they mean so much. Thank you so much for doing this, bro.
No, pleasure, great.
And again, like I acknowledged before the show, but I just want to say it live that we really appreciate how much both of you actually support Coral Minds magazine, like a project that started with Deli, Seagull and Caitlin, and then Lana doing a beautiful job with Marama, and both of you have been an essential part of media in this town,
Ross's-
which is so important, right?
Ross's articles, great reading. Thank you.
Oh, great. Glad you enjoy them.
No, I'm chasing up people that are living overseas at the moment and catching up with what they're doing, which is interesting and some amazing achievements.
It's a very rich column. We have people contacting us and saying how cool it is that we're acknowledging these people. So thank you so much.
No, my pleasure.
Nice. Taylor, is that us, my man? Thank you so much. Ron, I think we're going to have to bring you back, man, to tell more stories. We're going to have dinner again.
Then all that, so I'll be back for the dinner.
There you go.
And the beer,
And the
actually.
beer.
And the beer. We'll do
Yeah,
that.
no, that's hell. Totally recommend.
Yes, definitely.
And the meal. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
No, great.
Thanks, Ross.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Was it fun?
Yeah, it was real fun.
Good.
Really fun. Great to talk to Ron again. It's great.
Awesome. Well, we're going to have dessert now. See?
Oh, great.
Oh, what?
Oh.
Gee.
Thank you so much, Tanya. Thank you so much for all of you guys watching us at home. So much fun. Such a good show. And you know the drill. We'll be back next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Peace.